Environmentalists are going blue in the face, shouting about overfishing. But sustainability is not just about saving certain fish or restricting overfishing. It's also about watching out for the 80 million people dependent on fish globally. In other words, this means that 44% of the world's entire population is directly or indirectly dependent on the oceans for their livelihoods. But the supply chain is highly disintegrated. This leads to fisherfolk suffering financially, the consumer suffers on quality, and the oceans suffer the most environmentally. It's like a vicious cycle and quite complex to solve. But there are small organizations that are working to fix this large problem. Welcome DEVLEENA BHATTACHARJEE, who is a data scientist by profession and the founder of Numer8. And she is in pursuit of
I'm in pursuit of a sustainable blue economy.
So a sustainable blue economy, what all does it include?
Well, it definitely includes the lives and livelihoods of people. In India, it's close to 170 million people out of the 1.4 billion people. It's the immediate ocean surrounding them. It's, of course, the fisheries ecosystem. It's mangrove at certain part of India. It's coastal aquaculture in certain parts. It's salt industries. It's logistics. It's a lot of stakeholders to really reckon with.
DEVLEENA, tell me the space that has been dominated by men and data science, etc. And what's made you get into it? What drove you into it? And I think it's fantastic. I love saying that. I know DEVLEENA, she's a data scientist.
Well, I have not had a formal training in fisheries or anything to do with coastal economy. I think it's a long story, but frankly speaking, I think 2014, 2015, when I was still associated with the corporate, I was getting a bit impatient with not learning enough. I think my learning curve was kind of stagnating. So I was looking for something that I can really, which will give me some kind of a challenge. So that's where I started harboring the idea of starting my own. So got somebody off LinkedIn and he was looking for a co-founder, and without even knowing or understanding or even knowing the team, kind of went straight for it. So that was my first startup. That was Numer8. That was my first startup qualification. And it was a 1-year stint, 1.5-year stint, which was essentially my MBA in entrepreneurship, because I've always been a techie, always sat behind a desktop, comforts of office and churning data. But this was the first time I was actually learning the ropes of being an entrepreneur. We called ourselves a startup, but we were really far away from it. Somehow that kind of gave me a sense of the potential of satellite industry. We basically did a pilot for a South African insurance company where there was an application of satellite data in understanding the impact of bushfires. So that was my first, you can say, encounter with how powerful a satellite data analysis can be. But somehow we could not really translate that into an Indian market. Insurance and market in India is very, very difficult to really penetrate. So when I started Numer8 and solo founded Numer8 in 2017, I did not have much money left in the table. I almost spent it in my first startup. So first few years was not really product building. It's more like doing services and bringing money to the table, but always thought about going back to exploring more of the satellite data. But there was an European Space Agency grant that I came to hear of, applied to that, got selected, which gave us the opportunity to really select one of the business use cases that can be applied to downstream sectors by using satellite data. So that's where we started exploring the coastal ecosystem, and we said, okay, we are in India. What is the biggest issue in India, being in Bombay? It's rains and water flooding and coastal flooding. So that was the topic of our project. While doing that project, and this was 2018, you can say, we were not earning any money from that. Whenever you do these kinds of coastal ecosystem study or any kind of risk building, risk analysis, we do two parts of it. One is analyzing the geographical extent of a flood, how far the flood has entered, how many fields it have destroyed, how many buildings it has destroyed, and what is the kind of livelihood it has affected. That demography study for the last 10 years in India threw up a bunch of data sets, and one of them was the fact that small-scale fisheries are being affected. You can say that was kind of our first knock on the door with the fisheries issue. I am a fish eater, but I have no clue where the fish come from, no clue of what hardships the fisherman has to face. So we started interviewing people just out of curiosity. I stay in Bandra. Chimbai is very near. So started with Chimbai, went to Versova. Not that the fishermen were very keen to really talk to us. Interestingly, in the same time frame, a friend informed me about this World Food Program Accelerator, where they were looking for innovations, technologies that address the food security issues. And we were the only ones who were talking about food security issues of food from the sea, of coastal population.
Wow.
So it's 40 lakhs fishing community fishermen in India, 20 lakhs fisherwomen in India. 75% of the supply chain is supported by women. The men part of the population is just going out to the sea and fishing. The rest of the handling, cutting, gutting, packaging, transporting, selling is mostly women dominant. So in which case, going back to the WFP story, we finally got selected. We were the first in the entire WFP accelerator for the last 4 years, which is we were talking about the problem with the communities, and it is a worldwide problem. Back then, we did some studies. It is 67 countries across the world, large coastal plains, 800 million population. By end of WFP, we were kind of sure that this was a large enough problem for us to address. And we decided to, and we won the grant that gave us some kind of a fund to really, go about this thing that was, we did not have any validation. There was no market proofing. Everything had to be done from scratch, from technology to understanding, assessing the ecosystem to, talking to them, like entire problem solution bit. So we needed, we needed that time. So WFP gave us that opportunity, and that was the start of fishing, adventure.
Very appropriately put. So how does your organization work? What does it do to help the communities?
So we are essentially a tech-first, data-first company. We're a technology company. But we realized long back that tech was a means to an end. Without understanding the ecosystem, I cannot just spin up an app and I cannot just put on a Play Store, and I cannot expect fishermen to understand the app and apply it. My initial barrier in communication that happened with the fishing community was because I don't speak their language. They are not only just the language, the differences in culture. They treat me as a foreigner, which they should, because I'm not from the community. We realized that we have to have people in our team. They are from fishing communities. So we now have marine biologists who are from fishing families, who not only understand the subject matter, but understand the psyche of the
That's
person.
really niche.
I think I've been incredibly lucky to find that team, because without that team, whatever we did would have been quite impossible. 3 things that we realized that can be solved is, one being the operational cost of the fishermen out in the sea have gone up almost 5 times in the last 10 years. They are having a lot of, loss of fishing days because of increased amount of cyclones and storms and tropical weather conditions, so on and so forth. The 80% of their cost of operations out in the sea is fuel cost. Like for example, for a 5-day trip, I think an average cost of fuel will be 3 lakhs. And it's all out of pocket. So the cost of fishing operations is a big thing. The second thing is the very big gap when it comes to market linkages. You're talking about communities that are based out of the entire peninsular India, remote villages, who have the nearest fishing market is 50 kilometers from their village. They have no portable storage systems, and fish is a perishable product. The third bit is the fact that the community is so remote. There is no mainstream dialogue with the community. Only in the last 2 years, we are seeing some kind of dialogue in the center. Before that, fishing was grouped under agriculture, so it never really got any attention. Now, at least it is part of their own separate division.
Why would they be clubbed under agriculture?
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I have fishing and animal husbandry and agriculture all together in the same ministry. So fishing was a very lost department which were not given due attention. The outcome of all of it is the fact that nobody has done any kind of underwriting of this community. So there is no formal finance for the fishermen. They are highly tech savvy, but they have a very big trust barrier, which made our problems, made our communication or reach out very difficult. We realized that operational cost is, a factor of them not being able to kind of trace the climate shift or trace the climate change, given the traditional knowledge, which their forefathers could say, this part of the ocean, this time of the year, I'll get this fish. That's no longer happening for them.
There's no pattern anymore.
There is no pattern anymore. Just putting an app, any app like a Zomato or a Swiggy is very, very, urban centric. If you're giving them something, especially something that they will going to use in the sea, the user, experience of the app needs to be very different. So we had to spend a lot of time understanding when will they use the app, what should the symbolism look like. Through that, they are able to reduce their time of the day in time of fishing, and also, of course, reduce the fuel cost. That's one of the interventions.
So when you say that reduce the time spent in fishing, how much would have reduced for, say, an average fisherman?
There are various kinds of fishing fleets. A small boat goes for a day on a back. Trawlers will go typically for 2 to 5 days, and a person go for a longer duration. For a small boat, we see a savings of almost 50%.
Wow.
For a large scale boat, it's almost 25%.
That's pretty good.
That's again because the number of days reduces, the amount of fuel usage
reduces.
And of course, you're leaving a much less carbon footprint out in the sea as well. That's what our team does.
To know how Devleena is using her app N8OFish to aid fishermen in their livelihoods, stay tuned for the second part of this episode.